Hello, 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 everyone. How's it going? Welcome back to the part 4 of learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript by building mini projects. And it's a lovely Sunday morning for me. Too cold. You can hear that nasal thing in my voice, definitely. And yeah, how's your Sunday going? Is everyone enjoying it? Is it cold? Is it hot? Is it okay? Is it raining? Tell me in the chat. And meanwhile, uh, I will share the link to register if you haven't registered yet in the chat. Please, please, please do register for the event. Cold. Oh, nice. Cold is good, but too much cold. It's -3 right now for me. It's bad. It is really bad. Yep. So, anyways, please do register for the event if possible. Uh, I mean, it should be. It's not that difficult, but yeah, do register. And let's get an overview of what we have been doing. So, everyone who's joining me for the very first time, welcome. And anyone who's been in the last three parts, hello again. So we were building some basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript projects. And as we went on, we actually dove deep into a few things here and there. And that is why I have reached the second project by now. Let's see what we have done till now. So we built some a very basic homepage, I would say, for our projects. Then we went on to build a Pomodoro timer, which allows you to set how much time you'll work for and what would be your break time. And it has this very lovely progress bar that you can see. So, like, let's say you press a start, goes into a countdown mode and allows you to, like, see how much you're progressing in your work. And once that happens, then it switches from work mode to play mode, okay, or break mode, whatever you call it. So that happens, and you can always pause the timer in between. So, like, let's say I've paused it right now. uh, it stays paused, of course, and when you start it again, then it will start counting down from where it was paused. And finally, we also have a reset button, which allows us to reset the timer back to its initial state. So this was inspired by the Pomodoro learning technique, where you work for some time, then have a quick break, work for some time again, have a longer break. Helps with your productivity. And I'm going to wait for like 10 more seconds for this countdown to actually reach the play mode. Okay. You can always take this project and make it a much better version. Like, now we are in the play mode, and uh, you know you have a different color and everything of this was actually built with plain JavaScript. Okay, so normally, if you have seen my past streams, you might have known slash noticed that I favor React for most of the things when I do front end. But this time I was like, let's take the challenge of doing it in plain JavaScript. And while it's not that difficult, it was very quirky with respect to syntaxes. I had to research a lot for that. The second project that we have been working on slash building, which isn't complete yet, is a box shadow generator. Now, there is a box here which is not clearly visible, but once we start adding the shadow, it would be much better. Okay, so this was inspired by so many box shadow generators that exist. So, not an original idea, of course. uh, but what it allows you to do is add a shadow to a box. Now, this is huge. Why? Like, as from a project perspective, this is huge from a project perspective because you want to control the output from these slider inputs, which is fine. You also want to change, like, focus on this particular one. You want to change the values there dynamically, like making it as easy for the user to understand, or like make it very smooth, if you know what I mean. So that's what we have been doing here. changing the opacity of things and all those. uh, and there's like inline, like inset or outside, all those things. So we actually completed the CSS of it, the HTML of it, the CSS of it. And in this session we are going to focus on the JavaScript part of it, where we will finally add the interactivity. Right now you can move the slider, which is fine, but it does not do anything. It does not even change the values here because we are missing the interactivity. So that is an overview of our projects so far. uh, Let me look at the questions. Will we make all these all from scratch? Yes, we are building it from scratch. If you're joining the session for the very first time, may I kindly request you to get the code from GitHub. So I have pushed everything that we have built so far on GitHub. They're like what, 11 commits it seems. So yeah, you can find the code for Pomodoro, the completed one. Uh, you can find the box shadow code, which is kind of incomplete. The JS is like just started. Okay, that was my last comment. Box shadow JS just started. So it's still pending a bit. So once that is done, then uh, yeah, which we'll complete right now, you can then move ahead from there. Okay. If there are no further questions, I would love to go directly into the building part of it. Okay. I'm going to take the silence as golden and let's start building it. Now, Box Shadow HTML, this was something that we wrote yesterday. Box Shadow CSS, this was something that we wrote yesterday. Now, moving on to the Box Shadow JS. Now, unfortunately, if you are joining for the first time, you might not understand this exact syntax. So I'll give you a very quick overview. So document is basically the whole of HTML. So we can actually check it out if you do inspect element, go over to the console, and then do a document. You see how everything gets highlighted? But now if I do a get element by ID, which is something that exists there, and let's say I think I have one element called as horizontal, then it actually is one of the inputs here. Now, where did I get this ID, this horizontal from? So it is actually something that I have written in the ID equals to horizontal. Okay. uh, yeah, not horizontal value, sorry. ID equals to horizontal. IDs are supposed to be unique on the pages, so that is why you should always ensure that it stays unique. Now if I, let's say, go for horizontal value, I should get this span element with 0 pixels. Let's try that out. And I am going to change this to horizontal value, hit enter, and as you can see, if I hover over it, it focuses on this part. Now the reason why this is like really nice is because if I put it to a variable, okay, then I can change the content. Let's say, assuming like example, I can change the text content, which is currently 0 pixel, to 44 pixels. Okay, there we go, that has changed. So yeah, with JavaScript, you can modify the HTML and even the CSS, which we actually saw as a part of Pomodoro Timer. Okay, so yeah, that's about it. There is a question, where should I submit my project? You don't have to submit your project anywhere. This is more like learn along with me, build along with me experience, kind of. So what you have to do is, if you're interested in learning, definitely create your own repo, learn along with me. If you're stuck somewhere, I will keep pushing the code on GitHub, so you can keep copying it from there, and then just check it out, try it out, understand what's going on or what's missing, something like that. uh, Hope that makes sense. Okay. Also, if you want the past recordings of the sessions, they are not will be, they are available on YouTube. So anyone who is, yeah, anyone who is joining for the very first time and you have to watch the first three parts of this, you can find all of them on YouTube. Uh, they will be titled like Learn HTML, CSS, JS by Building Mini Projects. Uh, Also, the questions about Git and GitHub. Uh, there is a really good session that was conducted as a part of Global Hack Week about Git, like Get Good with Git, kind of. So you can find that video here to learn in detail about how to use Git, how it works, what's like, you know, yeah, like normal, like let's say it will help you in general, nothing more to say there. And to clone my repo, so yesterday we went spent some time over cloning versus forking. I would say in your if you have logged into your user, go and fork the repository. uh, won't complicate it today. So please go open this URL and click on the fork so that you can fork this repository. The fork would allow you to create a copy of what I have done on your side. And what else I would say? And then you can make changes to your code. Okay. Uh, you can't make changes to my code, of course. Okay. Anyways, moving on. Uh, let's get back. So I will let you focus on the screen so that it's way bigger and easy to see. And okay, so we were building the box shadow JS, and yesterday we talked a bit about functions. So now I am going to show you really quickly another function that we are going to build. But before that, there was one kind of function that we did, which was anything without params. Let's see if you have some params already. So let's say a function called as GHW. Okay, so this is the function name. Inside this is params. So let's say uh, we can have session name as one param and session number as second param. And now inside this, what you can do is you can do a console.log, and we can say, hi, welcome to, comma, session name, comma, numbered, comma, session number. Okay, close this. So what we have done is we have written a function of very single line, very simple function, where the function name is called GHW. The session name is the first parameter. The session number is the second parameter. And then if someone uses or invokes or calls this function, then it should print something. Okay. So now let me hit enter and it says undefined because we have not called the function. Now, if I go like GHW and session name is learn HTML and the session number is actually, let's say this is the fourth session, right? And I hit enter, as you can see, it prints out whatever we wrote here and it replaces your parameters with those values that you have passed. So the first value goes to session name automatically. The second value would go to session number, of course. Now, if you switch these around, like let's say 4 and then learn CSS example, it would be hi, welcome to 4. numbered learn CSS. So it's not really smart as respect if with respect to, oh, if I switch it around, would it be able to uh, know things? No, all it is doing is it's taking whatever you're passing here and replacing this name with the value. Okay. Now, for the same function, if I reload this, for the same function, instead of doing a console log, you can also do something like a return. Okay, you can do a return. Now, if I do this return, it will not work properly because return, unlike console log, does not understand these comma things. So we should make this whole thing a proper string. And a way to do it is by using these backticks. Okay. So backticks, it makes things a string, but now here session name will not be populated. Why? Or actually, let's check it out. I am going to remove additional things right here. So this is what we are left with. It looks like an exact string. So let's call this GHW with, oh, wrong one, learn HTML and 4. So I called the function with two parameters, but it still says here session name and session number, because these variables are now no longer uh, a variable. Okay, they have become a string, a simple string. So to fix that, what we can do is we can go back to our code, and here you can use a dollar sign, curly brackets inside. Okay, you can see how the color has changed. That is one way to understand that there would be something that's different about this, and I don't need this end brackets. So I do this and I click call the function with two parameters, and there we go, we have the same answer back. So when you do a return, it kind of would work out similar to console log. Okay. So from a function, the idea is that you always return a value. You don't normally console log inside the function. You return a value. Why? Because now you can assign this value to something. So I can say const is mlh. So now here, this is mlh is a variable and const is the type, that it would be a constant variable. It should not change. And now I can assign it to the function. Okay. So as you can see, it did not print anything. Normally it was, but now it did not. But if I do mlh and I hit enter, that has the value of whatever came back from here. So whatever was returned, okay, focus on the keywords. Whatever was returned from the function has been assigned to this variable called as mlh. And what was returned? We can see that it returned this string. We also had seen this type of, so that would give you like type of mlh, which is string. Okay. So that's functions. So now the next step why I went on this was because I want to show you the next function, which would be called as hex to RGBA. It will take in two parameters. One is hex, the second one is opacity. Okay. And what is hex to RGBA? So we all actually have this kind of string, okay, in our code. So let's say I assign it to const a equals this string. So if I print a, that is this particular string. Now what we want to do is we want to slice this up. So what you could do is a dot slice. When you say slice, you define the start, like where to start the slicing from and where to end the slicing -1. So if I do 1,3, as you can see, uh, how do I explain it? Okay, first let's see what is the length of this. So a dot length gives me 9. So there are 9 characters here, starting from like this is the first character, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth. Okay, so there are 9 characters, but the position of them would start at 0. So this hashtag is at 0th position. This, okay, this is a very bad example with all zeros. So let me actually change it to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Or should I do numbers there? Anyways, GH, I think that's fine. Okay, so this hashtag is at 0th position. Okay, the A is at first position, the B is at second position, the C is at third position. So you can do like A dot index of, and if I do the hashtag, it returns 0. Also just realized this variable naming might confuse you. So let me actually change this variable name to something else. What can I name it? Test. Okay, now I can do test dot index of hashtag. What is test dot index of A? 1. Test dot index of B? 2. So index is nothing but the position. So hashtag is at 0th position, A is at first position, B is at second position, and so on and so forth. Now we can actually, what if I only want AB from here? Can I in some way break this string or slice this string? So yes, you can do a test dot slice. You have to give the start position. What is the start position of A? It is 1. And you have to give the end position, uh, which I know that for me the end position should be 2 because I want B. But the way slice works is you tell the end and it goes only one step before that. So in my case, I will say the end is 3 and it returns AB. Okay. What if I want CD? In that case, I can do it starts from 3. Why? Because this is 0th position, first position, second position, third position. And it goes up, like we want everything before the 5th. Okay, before the 5th. So that gives me CD. What about EF? It starts at 5th before the 7th. What about uh, everything from the 5th position? I can do that. So you can do test dot slice and just specify the first thing. Then it will go all the way to the end. So it starts from 5th position, which is E, goes up all the way to the end. Okay. So that is slicing method. Now we will use that to actually get color from RGBA. Now why the color? Because very simply, uh, a hex code is actually, as you can see the warning here, a hex code is nothing but the first 2 values in a color represent red, the second 2 are green, and the last 2 are uh, blue. Okay, so that is what we are going to do. We are going to convert this hex code to a RGBA. Now inside this, I am going to go, could have gone const, I think. Let's say const r equals to parse int the hex that you receive, slice it from 1 to 3. Okay, so this should give me from the first position, like ignoring the hashtag, the hash key, uh, the first 2 is what we want. And we know that this is a hex code, so that is why the radix would be 16. Okay, so what is this radix business now? So a number can be converted to something, uh, like let's say if I have a number 45, I can do parse int 45, and then I can give it a radix of 10. it returns 45. But what about AB? If my number is AB and the radix is 10, well, that does not sound right. There's no number in decimal system in our like 0, 1, 2, 3, in our counting numbers AB. But if that goes to 16, if the radix is 16, which is hexadecimal number, then AB becomes relevant and it actually translates to 171. Okay, what about binary? Example, uh, if you have 0, 1, 0 in decimal number, okay, this is the base 10. So remember your math class. So in that case, 10 is nothing but 10. But in binary, this actually becomes 2. Okay, 1, 0 becomes 2. So similarly, like if I do 1, 0, 1, it actually in binary is 5. Okay, so this second digit, it specifies what is the base or the radix, not the base. What's the radix? So is it binary? Is it decimal? Is it hexadecimal? And I know that the colors are called as hex codes for a reason. They are hexadecimal. So that is why I'm putting the radix as 16. What about the next one, the green? So we can kind of copy this over to the green, but now the slicing would start at 3 and we want the third and fourth digit. So we will go up to 5. And similarly for B, that is the blue, it will start from 5, go up to 7. Okay. And now finally, we will return the value as RGBA dollar, the R value, comma, dollar, the G value, and comma, dollar, the B value, and comma, dollar, the opacity. The opacity is going to come from like as an input to this function. So this is what is going to be returned from hex to RGBA. Okay, so what we have done is once given a hex code would be of the format uh, hashtag uh, 4ACF22 example, this which translates to green. It will, what's the red part? The red part is 4A. What's the green G part would be CF, and what's the B part would be 22. And so convert this hexadecimal to something like this RGBA. 4A converted to base 16 would be what? Parse int 4A comma 16 is 74. So this becomes 74. What about CF? CF converted to base 16 would be 207. And what about 22 converted to base 16? That would be actually 34. So the equivalent, as you can see, as soon as I write 34, the equivalent of this color in RGBA, where the A is missing still because I don't have the opacity value here, but you can also say RGB. The equivalent of this to RGB is these numbers. Okay. So that is what we are going to do with this function. That is what this function is going to return to us. Okay, you can see green and green. If I change this value slightly to let's say what was it, 207, I change this to 107, you can see the color changes. Okay, so we know that I'm not lying. Anyways, moving on to the next bit, which would be to update the shadow. Now this would be a very big function, so please give me your undivided attention here. So we have converted the colors. Why did we convert the colors though, if you ask? Because if you see this box shadow generator, the last bit is actually the RGBA color scheme. Okay, so what is like the color that you choose here is what changes this bit. Okay, so we want to, yeah, we want to show it as a part of a code that, oh, if you add this RGBA values, that is the color you will achieve. And that's why we are doing this thing. The next one is a function to update shadow. So let's write this function. We'll call it function update shadow, which does not take in any input. Uh, what do we want? What do we want? Where is our box shadow code? There we go. Hmm. Oh, so we can actually take this opacity value, which we have initially set at 25%, which is this one, and change the opacity. Okay, so let's focus on that. We had actually got the opacity value stored in this variable, which is called as opacity value, uh, which found this particular element of 25%. Okay, so yeah, let's actually start from there. So we should get the current opacity value by doing const current opacity. Yeah, current opacity sounds about right, equals to opacity, uh, this one. Actually, let's get the element by ID, which is this one, the input box. And on that input, we know that there would exist a value, and divide it by 100. That should give us the current opacity. And now we will say const shadow color is equal to, we'll call our function hex to RGBA, where we will pass the color dot value. What is this color that we are getting? It is get element by ID color. So if you search for ID equals color, this one, this particular input. So that's what we are passing it here. So color dot value, comma, current opacity. Okay. So our function, our hex to RGBA function, actually needed two things. It needed the current hex and the opacity, and that's what we are providing it. Uh, okay. Now, if I hover over this, do you see this annotation, that function hex to RGBA? It takes in hex, which is anything, opacity, that is anything, and then colon string. So the way to read it is, you have this function where the parameters hex and opacity, they take anything, but they return string, and you can make it more specific by adding something called as JSTOC. So you can say that the first parameter is going to be a string hex, and the second parameter, opacity, is also going to be of type string. And you can say the hex code of color, the opacity of color returns RGBA string. Okay, now that I've written all of this, uh, and I can also give it a description, converts uh, hex to RGBA. And now if I hover over this, you see there's much more description. And now this any change to string. Now I can say, like, instead of string, if I say that this is a number, And if I hover over it, now it says hex is a number, which is actually not true. So don't mislead your users uh, or developers. But now you get a much more descriptive message here that, oh, what is hex to RGBA? It is doing this. And you can avoid adding these, what do you call, these JS docs by using TypeScript. So you don't have to define the type right here. So here what we are actually doing is defining the type of this variable hex as string, the type of this opacity as string. You can say it returns a string, okay, which we didn't have to specify, because I think JavaScript is smart enough to do that, or at least VS Code is. Okay, so yeah, that is one thing that I wanted to show you, how you can add annotations to your functions, which will make it easier for the next user. They can just hover over it and it will show them a description, a definition of what and what is expected, what is not expected, all those things. Now, the next thing that we want to focus on is this checkbox. When you check the checkbox, if you see the actual project, if you go to the inset side, which is basically same as checking the checkbox, the shadow of whatever you have done, let's say go for a red, it goes inside. But if it is outside, there we go. You see the difference, inside and outside. Okay, inset and outside, inset and normal. So that's what we want to do with this particular checkbox. So let's focus on that. Const inset value equals inset, which is, how do we know what is inset? I'm pretty sure we added an ID for that. uh, there we go, id inset dot checked. How do I know that it would be checked? Like for some inputs I go for value, for something else I go for checked, because of the type that we have defined on the input. We say that it is type checkbox, so I know that there would exist a dot checked on it. So if it is checked, then we say return inset, else return empty. And you notice the space that I'm adding between the closing bracket. That is because if you go to inset, you see this space between the word inset and the next value, and like there's spaces between. So that is why I'm adding that particular space. uh, okay, now we can say const box shadow value equals, inside the backticks, I want to replace some things with value, like inset value would come in here. Then what about my dollar horizontal value? Where is this horizontal value coming from? It is right here. Okay, get element by id. uh, Actually not horizontal value, I can't do horizontal value, I have to do horizontal, which is my first element. Yeah, this input, I need the value from this. So instead of doing horizontal value, what I want to do actually is horizontal dot value. So the difference, what is horizontal value? So id horizontal value, which is this particular variable, this is all the span classes. And these are all the inputs. So that's the difference. So in our case, these sliders, these are all the inputs. Okay, but the span classes is all the text that is written here. These texts are span classes. So might have confusion. What we want is not this, because we want to change this. Actually changing the input should change this value here, and we will do that with JavaScript. But to get the actual value, it will come from this input. Okay, So just so that you understand why horizontal dot value. Similarly, we will do what should do vertical dot value. We'll need that. Similarly, we oh, and also these things would be pixels, so I can add px. How do I know that? Because if I look at this, 17 pixels minus 19 pixels, 147 pixels minus 14 pixels. Okay, so vertical value would be pixels. What about the blur? I can do blur dot value, which would be pixels. uh, what is the blur here? It's this document dot get element by id blur. uh, what else? We'll have the spread value. So spread dot value, where what is spread? Document dot get element by id spread, which would again be in pixels. And then finally we'll show the shadow color, okay, which is the return from that hex to rgba. So that's our box shadow value. So we have kind of created this thing where if it is inset, then actually I don't need this space, because after inset we'll add a space. If it is not an inset, this will be nothing, this would be empty, and we'll start directly from horizontal value pixel, vertical value pixels, and all those things. I can show that to you very quickly by changing this to this. Okay, as you can see, it starts directly from here. So horizontal value, vertical value, blur value, spread value, and shadow color. This is our box shadow done. Now we would have had created an ID box. Uh, yeah, okay. What we want to do is box dot style that the box shadow to actually the box shadow value variable that we have created. So this box, we want to style it to the box shadow value. Let's see if it actually would work out. Unfortunately, not yet. We haven't reached that stage. Okay, no worries. We will soon. The code dot text content, we want to, oh, we haven't actually reached there yet because we haven't called this function. So let me call this function right below. And here the code dot text content, I want that to be to show similar to what it was shown on this particular website, box shadow, and then this whole box shadow value. Okay, so I'm going to do box dash shadow colon space dollar, this whole variable value comes in there. So now if I go over to ours, there we go, 5 pixel, 5 pixel, 10 pixel, 0 pixel rgba, and this and 25% changes to 0.25. If I change it, nothing is happening, we are not actually checking a few things, but this is the initial, and you can see the box shadow that was generated. Okay, so we know that at least the box shadow part kind of works. Okay, what's the next thing? Well, we want to update the displays, right? Update the displays here. uh, so we have a horizontal value, which is the span class, which is the actual display. So horizontal value dot text content equals, it's going to be a string, so that is why I'm putting it in backticks. It would be horizontal dot value pixels. So let's see that. So now if I should have worked, I'm missing something. Horizontal, oh yeah, event listener. Yes, yesterday we added these event listener things which we haven't yet. So what is event listener? We'll come to it. For now, let's do vertical value dot text content, which would be actually be equal to this thing, but instead of horizontal, it would be vertical dot value in pixels. Similarly, I'm going to copy paste it for blur value and spread value. And I'm going to change, select this part vertical, do a control D or command D and change this to blur, because I know mine is called blur value for text content. I want to change the blur dot value pixels. Similarly, the second vertical, I'll do a control D or command D if you're on Mac. Once that selects the, you see two cursors now. Okay. So I want to change this to actually spread. And now I know that spread value dot text content is equals to spread dot value pixels. We also have color value dot text content, that would actually be equal to color dot value dot to uppercase. What does to uppercase do? As the name suggests, it converts things to uppercase or capitalized. So if I let's do A B C D dot to uppercase, it should return all caps A B C D. And finally, we have opacity value dot text content, which would actually be equal to opacity dot value in percentage. Okay, opacity is in percentage. Opacity value, this is the span element, which is this thing. And opacity, this just opacity, it is actually the input slider here. Okay, and that should trigger the change in this text, is what we are doing, is what we are saying. Next thing that we want to do is actually add a event listener. So we can do that by doing horizontal dot add event listener. The event listener would be called as input. Okay, change in input. In that case, update shadow should be called. Okay, so this same function we are calling inside here, which is wrong. We should not do that. So outside of this function, now we do this. So now if I change this, you see the change. Horizontal things are changing, vertical not so much. I can now do similar to this, we will do a vertical dot add event listener input update shadow. So now if I do vertical change, the box shadow is changing. Even the code here is changing, if you notice. And horizontal. Okay, so two things are completed. So that's our box shadow kind of nearly there. So similarly, we have to add for everything. We have to add for blur, spread, color, opacity, inset. Okay, so we can copy paste this so many times. Blur, spread, color, opacity, and inset. Okay, all these things. So blur, horizontal, vertical, blur, spread, color, opacity, inset, these were all our input elements. So I kind of did all of that. So now if I do a blur radius, you see how blurry it gets. Spread radius would be how much it should be spread outside. And the opacity is how dark or how light should it be. Okay, like opacity of 20% versus opacity of 100%. What about colors? If I change that to like red, blue, like let's say this purplish thing, there we go. And now what about inset? Inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside. Okay, perfect. So that is our box shadow complete, right? Not really this copy button. I also want to click, like work on this, that when you click on this button, it should copy the code that exists here. So let's do that. uh, copy button. What is our copy button called? It's called copy button. Okay. So let's call the copy button dot add event listener. In this case, the event listener is not change in input, but it would be a mouse click. Okay, so click event. So when someone will not go and do something, they'll click this button. Now, if this is the click and then we call the function, in our case, we'll create a function right here. So to create a function, there are two ways. We have seen two ways to create a function. The first way is called as this, like your normal session kind of, like not session, your function declaration is by using function GHW, and then you can inside this return, uh, where is my function GHW of return, where is it? Yeah, we go. So this is one kind of function, and we can call this by doing GHW, then the name of the session, and then session name and session number. You can also write this exact function by using const GHW equals. Const is what we use to define a variable, right? But now in this case, we'll give it the session name and session number as parameters. And then you do a equals to and greater than, which is called as arrow. Okay, so arrow function. And now after this, you can do curly brackets below, like inside the curly brackets, you copy paste the exact same thing and then close it. Okay. Oh, I cannot name GHW function here and again GHW. So I'm going to name it GHW arrow. Okay. So now we can call the GHW arrow with the exact same parameters right here. And it works the exact same way. So these are two different syntaxes of writing a function. This is the first way of writing it. This is the second way of writing it. So if I remove this first part from here, okay, and I just focus solely on this, would that work out? It does work out. Okay, it says that there is a function, but the problem is then you also need to provide these two values here. How will you do that is a question. So they can be passed from somewhere outside. Okay, so let me uh, try and see. Hmm. Hmm, 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 hmm. Yeah, yeah, I was thinking like, what am I missing? So yeah, I could do something like this where I'm not defining the first bit. Okay, I'm not assigning it to any variable. All I'm doing is creating the function and then calling it directly with something. So this works out, and this is called as uh, I think it's called IIFE, instantly invoked function expression, if I'm not wrong. Yes, you can read more about it in the docs in the chat. So what I have done is uh, what we had before, which was this thing. Okay, this thing was a function. I took this part after the equals and wrapped it in a bracket and then called it directly. So hello, comma 45 for some reason. So welcome to hello number 45. This is what it would print. So we have written the function and invoked it very quickly. So you do this as at many places. You do this as something called as callbacks. And if I start going into callbacks, it's going to take so much time to exactly understand it. But for the time being, uh, this, I would say go with this syntax, which is arrow function right here. Now, inside this arrow function, the way we had return, now how do I copy something to clipboard is what we are going to see. To actually copy something from the clipboard, you could do window dot navigator dot clipboard dot write text. And inside this, we'll have whatever is the code, which is this element, which is nothing but input box dot text content, and this returns a promise. Okay, so what is a promise? Now that may be the next question, so let's check this out. uh, id code, right? Okay, so let's define const code box equals doc not do document dot get element by id code. So now what this will do is find the element if something like that exists. So if I do code box, yes, it found this particular element. Now I can do window, which is the whole thing. The way document, if I write document, it highlights this whole page. Okay, the window goes beyond that as well. It goes like, you can think of a window as something that goes up to this top bar, or like even after that. Okay, window is the outermost parent. So in our case, I can do window dot navigator, okay, dot clipboard dot write text, which is a function, and it takes in the data. So now I will say take the code box dot text content, okay, and I hit enter. So now it says fail to execute this document is not focused. Okay, so if I focus on that, let's see if no, I need to be on this. So we could do a focus event on that. What I wanted to show you was a promise, but oh, you can also still see this. There is this rejected. Okay, this promise is rejected. A promise can have two states. You can say there is a successful state and there is a failure state. Actually, there's also a pending state. Yes, there are three states to a promise. So you can say with a pending state is when this is being executed. It is like, you can think of the pending state as the time it takes for something to get over. So that is your pending state. So if I click on a button, it goes in and it finds something, and then it finally like returns something. So that would be your like how much time it took. You can think of it as a pending state. Then you have a fulfilled state, which is similar, like which is success, right? Fulfilled, a promise is fulfilled, which means that it has been executed successfully. Okay, and whatever was supposed to happen has happened successfully. Or there is the rejected, that it first tried to do it, then it was like, nope, this is not allowed because of some reason, and that is your rejected state. Want to see one quick thing? Okay, we'll need to focus on it. Okay, anyways, uh won't do it in the inspect element console. Let's do it here. So window.navigator.clipboard. Also, you can see what all window has. A window has a lot of things, Like these are the things that exist on a window, which is basically your whole Chrome. The inner width, inner height, so you know the size of a monitor, uh, the window, just too many things. And window dot navigator, you can see what that has. Uh, App code name Mozilla, app name Netscape, credentials, a login, log, service worker, storage buckets, a lot of things right here as well. Okay, going back. So text content, and since it's a promise which can have, as I said, kind of three states: if it's pending, if it's fulfilled, or is it rejected. So based on that, we have this dot then uh, chain. Okay, it's called as a chain. What it does is you say that try this out. If you have tried this out and if it is fulfilled, then in that case chain it over, and now do something like dot original const original text equals to copy button dot text content. Excuse me. Why did I do this? Because I want to save what is the copy button called. It is called as copy. So I'm saving that to the original text. Then I'm going to change that text content to be called as copied. So when someone clicks on copy button, it should change to copied. Okay, which is nice. The problem is that after some time, it should come back or return back to copy. Okay, so let's do that. So as I said, after some time, like let's say 1 second or 1.5 seconds. So to do that, we could kind of add something called as a set timeout. In set timeout, you pass in what is supposed to happen. Inside that, you pass what is supposed to happen. So I want the copy button dot text content to return back to the original text. And then after this bracket, like you see this bracket, it ends this right here. After this, you pass after how long, like the timeout. Okay, so after 1 point, like 1500 milliseconds. Okay, not 1500 seconds, that's just a lot. And I think that should be it. So now if I go over, change this, change the shadow color, change the blur radius, spread radius, just a lot, slightly, yep, blur radius slightly less. And now I click on copy button, it changes to copied and goes back to copy. And if I paste it, this is what it is copied. Okay, which is exactly the same thing. I can change the horizontal radius, that changes the code here. Click on copy, and there we go, minus 28. Okay, so we know that our copy button is working perfectly fine. And this is still a mystery. So what I'm going to do is uh, I'm going to remove, no, I'm going to first read about it, like why is it being a pain, because I would have assumed that it would work. Okay, that's gone. Let's see, it still works though. Okay, vertical length go up or go down a bit, horizontal go right side a bit more, uh, blur out a bit more, and spread, actually this much is fine. uh, Opacity, I want a lesser opacity. Actually, I can spread out a bit more, but opacity could be reduced. Okay, and inset, oh, in this less opacity it wouldn't be exactly visible, but inset, okay, that works. I want a lesser opacity. Okay. And now you can actually add this to any CSS. So in our case, let's add it to the CSS of Pomodoro. In Pomodoro, did we have something which we could focus on? Let's see. If I go over to the Pomodoro timer, there was the start button, there was pause button and this, and there was that 25. So where is that 25? Let's check this out. So basically we're going to test out if this box shadow works properly. If it doesn't, then it's your job to fix it. Pomodoro time, I think right here, this should do the trick. And there it is. There's a slight box shadow. Let me change the color a bit more so that it's much easily visible. So opacity, let me increase that. Copy this, come over here, paste that, go to Pomodoro timer, and there we go. Okay, so our box shadow code works as well. And yep, everything looks fine to me. So any questions so far, anyone? Let me come back on screen. Any questions, anyone? Anything? We have tried it out, we have tested it out, it works. Let me also push this code so that you all have access to it. Oh, you can also add whatever I had cut. Okay, so what I can do is take this, remove from here, and I could do a example saying that this gets converted to this. So now if I hover over it, example, this will return this. Okay. Any questions? Nothing? Okay. Seems like I have been an excellent teacher and everyone has understood exactly what I wanted to say, which is really nice for me. So that's good. Let me push this out quickly. So git add all, git commit box shadow JS completed, and git push. So now you should have the exact code that I had. Yep, box shadow JS completed. And there you go, it's in the chat. So that's our second project complete, and hooray. Now we have time to start the third project. I'm not sure if we'll be able to end the third project, but I'll give my best to try it. uh, Now the third project, it explores another bit. Oh, that's okay if you are still on the third part. Like this will be recorded. This is recorded, so you should be fine. Okay. Uh, yeah. So I was talking about the third project. Now, the third project is interesting. It explores a bit, another bit of web development, which is storing the data. So we have seen a few things by now. Like let's revise those. We have seen how do you read from inputs. We have seen how do you listen to button clicks change in inputs. Excuse me. We have seen how do you kind of uh, work your way through some of the things that are available in a window, like let's say navigator. Okay, the window.navigator, to navigate through things, to navigate or on the page. So we've kind of seen those things. And while yeah, not while yeah, so we have seen those things, and that's really nice. Now the next project is going to be exploring storing data, and we'll store the data on the browser. How do we do that, where do we do that, is what we'll learn. Now there are multiple ways to store the data. uh, let's talk about a few of them. The first one is, which is very famous, it's called local storage. So you can store the data in the local storage of your browser. So if I do an inspect element here, go over to the application tab, you can see that there is this local storage, and you can store data as a key value pair right here. Then you have session storage, okay, which is what, like, for this particular page, for this particular session, do you want to store anything? Okay, so I have two things that are kind of injected here. uh, I have no idea from where. One is from live server, where the key is this first time log from live server? The answer is true, and there is something else. I have no idea. Okay, the third one where you can store, now the difference between local storage and session storage. Local storage is when you close this tab, uh, the data still remains when you open it again. Okay, for session storage, when you close this tab, whatever you have saved here gets lost. Okay, so if you open this page again, uh, and you have stored something, that would be gone. Let me try one. Now the session has something called a session length. So let's say this is session, and the value is true. Okay. And now if I copy this, close it, go over to Box Shadow Generator, and let's see. Not sure how long is the session, but okay, it is short, so it's gone. Okay, local storage, if I do that, uh, that is, this is local, and the value is mlh GHW as a string. So that's it. Box shadow, close this, reload, open the application tab. Local still exists, and you can kind of clear or delete the selected one by doing this, or you can delete all of them by doing clear all. So I want to delete the selected one. Session storage is gone. After the first close, you open it again, gone. The third thing that I want to really explore and show all of you is indexed DB. Now, indexed DB is really different. Why? Because with local storage and session storage, you have around, I think, 10 MB. Size of local storage. Oh, 5 MB of local storage and 5 MB of session storage per origin. So you have like 5 MB of local storage. You cannot store data more than 5 MB uh, on local storage. You cannot store data more than 5 MB on session storage, and 5 MB is a lot. Okay, if you think about it, it's a lot. But what if you want to store data which remains there even after you have closed this, you have refreshed this, you have restarted the browser, uh, and you have gone to this website? So there comes the index db. Now index db is actually whatever is your hard drive, hard disk storage, 80% of that. Oh, no, I'm pretty sure it's 80%. So whatever is your hard drive, 80% of that is kind of index DB storage. But let's say if you have installed like Counter Strike and a bunch of games, and your hard drive space is now from, like, let's say 1 TB, if it has reduced to uh, 500 GB, so then 80% of that, okay, is what you can store in the indexed DB. Uh, I think now 60% sounds familiar. Probably 60% or 80%. But okay, the idea is that you can store that much of data on an in IndexedDB. So the next project is about storing data in IndexedDB so that it remains there for later. Also, in the next project, we'll also see how do we fetch data from an API. And in our case, the API that I'm going to use is called Open Library Developer API. So as you can see, the yeah, the project Open Library, it kind of gives you an idea. And also because we have a folder called as library, the project is going to be about a library page, like a personal library page slash system, where you can request for a book, like search for a book. Example, uh, let's say I search for this particular thing, the Lord of the Rings. Okay, so let's let it load, and it returns these many things: who is the author, contributor, the number of editions of the book, uh, ton and ton of data about the Lord of the Rings book. So we are going to there you go, the title, uh, ID Goodreads, ID Library, anything, uh, ID Amazon, Wikidata. So all these data that exist about it, who are the publishers of this apparently. Let's say you get a ton of data when you search for a book. So on our page, what we are going to focus on is that there would be a search box where you type the name of the book, hit the search button, and it goes and fetches, okay, from this particular website, from the openlibrary.org website or openlibrary.org API, uh, like whatever you have searched. Okay, so gets a list of all the books, then it shows those books in a table. Then the next bit would be, you want to, like if I've searched for the Lord of the Rings and it returns me one book or 10 books or whatever, uh, I should be able to add them to my library. So when there will be a button on click of which it will add them to library. And add them to library basically means add them to the index DB. Okay, so it is now going to be stored in the indexed DB. Once that is done, we can uh, oh, we'll also fetch the images, like the book covers, which we'll talk about, or when we start coding it, we'll see that. But yeah, ideally, you imagine like a table with name of the book, author, and a button, which is like add to library. Another book, another author name, add to library, all those things. Okay, so on and so forth. Once that is done, and any books that I add to my library, I should be able to view them, right? I should be able to view what is in my library. So I'll be like going to a new page or a new tab, and then I want to basically fetch all the books from my index db, or get all the books from my index db that I have stored. Now once uh, fetched them or got them, once I get them, uh, then I should be able to mark them as read or unread. Okay, default everything is unread. Any books that I add to my library is unread, but if I have read or completed reading the book, there will be a button to mark it as read. Okay, that I've read this book, done, completed. Okay, awesome. So once that gets done, you refresh the page, you close the tab, you come later, the data should be there. It should not change, it should not refresh. So like when I say refresh, like let's say I change this to 72, I change this to red, it's here. But if I refresh, it goes back to the initial state. But once we store the data in indexedb, it will remain there until you delete it, until you delete the indexedb itself or you remove it. So anytime you change the data, that's when it will change. Otherwise it will remain as is. You come today, tomorrow, 1 year later, if you have not cleared your indexedb, it will be there. And if you have not uninstalled your browser, of course. Okay, there is a question: is cached a local or session storage? Okay, that is interesting. That could be whatever you want. There is specifically a cache storage as well, but caching is a very abstract concept. Yeah, it's not a thing explicitly. Cache storage, you can have, like, you can create your own cache, keep it, and then you have to write logic to remove it. Some people use local storage as for caching, because what is caching? Ideally, caching is basically that instead of coming back to the server again and again to fetch some data, store it locally to the user's browser, so that when they go, like, uh, let's see, let's say this project. Okay, now if talk about caching on this project, what I'm saying is, from code, if I go over to insights, it got these insights. I go over to contributors, it's crunching data, latest data just for you, and okay, commit history goes down. Go over to Pearls, come back to contributors. This time it was a bit faster. Go back to code, uh, reload the page, come back to insights, come back to contributors, faster. This is now kind of cached. Okay, that is the concept of caching. Instead of going back to GitHub server to fetch the data again and again, it basically checks, like, has there been, like, was it requested like 1 second ago? Did anything change in 1 second? Nope. So let's not overwhelm our servers to go through that number crunching thing again. Let's just do it quickly right here. For some other project, like, let's say if I go to color palette generator, which is one of my infamous famous projects, go over to contributors, crunching latest data, takes time. Okay, it's doing something. Okay, let's wait for that to happen. uh, but once this is done, there would be some sort of indication stored somewhere really quickly that, uh, okay, this is kind of cached. So now if I go to code, go to insights, contributors, quicker. Okay, so caching could be anything, whatever you want. There would be cache data probably, there would not be cache data probably. uh, Depends. Okay, so that's my bit about caching. uh, you can store it anywhere you want. It's an abstract idea slash concept. It's not a hard and fast thing, a rule or anything. Okay, so let's start with our library project. Hopefully everyone has what I have, like, pushed, and now start focusing on the library.html. Also, I don't think I'll be able to complete the whole thing right now. So keep a lookout for possibly a session. Okay. Like, probably a part 5 and part 6, which, like, if I'm seeing my availability, and if I can do a part 5 and part 6 of this session, then we'll be able to complete the library.html. If not, I will make changes, I'll push it, and you can kind of view it later. Okay, it will be on my repository. I'll try to add as many comments as possible so that you understand what is going on. Yeah, that's it. Now let's focus on this one. So, library project, excited. Now this one's going to be pretty big. Okay, so the h1 tag, let's start from there. uh, Same as what we did in Box Shadow, where we created a main class container and all those things. I will do the same here. So I'll do main dot container. This is a short form in VS Code, which gives you main with class container. Okay. Inside this, I will use a h1 tag of my library, or let's say library management. Okay, much more fancy. uh, Then we want two tabs. One is the search books tab, one is the my library tab. Okay, it's like, yeah, switching, yeah, tabs. So view dot view dash toggle, creating a div, and inside this I want a button with hashtag search uh, view button, and it would be search books. Okay, I can give it a class as well. This is initially active, so this is for CSS styling when we do that. And similarly, I want a button with an ID, library view dash button, and it would be my library. Perfect. So that's our toggle buttons. So what would they do if we actually check them out quickly? Then library page, closing everything. Two buttons right here. Search books, my library. So switching between these two and changing the colors and everything would be done as part of the browser. Uh, Why did I say browser? Sorry. Switching between these two would be done as part of CSS, like changing the colors and stuff. But ideally, what we want is when what something is active, that will be shown to the user, and the other thing would be hidden. And if you switch over, then this class active would be applied to my library. Anything that is below this would be hidden. Anything that is below this part would be shown. Okay. Next one is we want a div with an ID of search dash section. Okay. Inside this, we'll have a search class, a class of search dash container. Inside this, we'll have a class of dot basic dash search. You see the amount of nesting that I'm doing. Uh, this is so that we can style bits and pieces of it individually. Okay. So basic search, this will have input box. We want an input box, right? So input of ID search dash input. So input type of text and ID is search input, and you can give it a placeholder. Okay, what's a placeholder? Something like that is shown uh, inside the input box. So search for books dot dot dot, and it says that provide an aria label or a label. Since I'm not using label right now, I can give it a aria label. It is for search input. So now if I go here, you see the search for books inside the input box. That is your placeholder. So if you don't want labels, in that case, you can do placeholders. Below this input, I want a button. So button, button, with an ID of search dash button, and of course it would be called as search. And that's our basic search div complete. And then we'll have, okay, so there's our input box and there's a search button. When someone types here something and clicks on search, that should trigger a search, or it should go and do what we did in the browser. Okay, go and get stuff. So that's fine, that works. But you can also have more filtering. So if I look at the documentation, and I've shared the link to the documentation, by the way, if I haven't, let me do it again very quickly. Yep, there we go, the link to the documentation. So if you go over to the first one, which is book search, you see that they have this query, title, author, and they have like more fields that are available. Example, you can set what is the language of all the books that it should get, or limits, like should it get one book, 100 books, 1,000 books. Because when you search for Lord of the Rings, there are like 1,000 books that are returned, kind of like at least 100 or 250, depending on different editions, different versions, when they were printed, excuse me, all those things. So I don't want so much data, because I know that it takes so much time to actually load so much data. Look at this. uh, the amount of scrolling, like, I have to do 29,804 books were returned, kind of. uh, okay, yeah. And 27,000 lines of uh, JSON object were returned. So that's just a lot. uh, I don't want that much. I want like 10 at a time. I'll be very happy. So that's why we'll have a filtering part to our code, where you can filter out uh, some of the searches. And okay, let's see. So advanced search, we can do dot advanced dash search. Inside this, we'll have dot search dash field, and inside this I will have a label uh, for author. So author colon, and input with an ID of author. So now we are back to label and input. uh, Type of course would be text. You cannot search for a author with a number. And we'll have a placeholder as author name. So that's our search field div tag done. Then we want a search field div tag for author actually done. Then we want to choose the language. We can filter out by language. So let's say in this case, what we are saying is that search for Lord of the Rings, but if you know who is the author, like uh, JJ Tolkien, then in you can give that author name, and then the books that will be returned would be more precise to that author. Like, what if there is another author who has written uh, books, okay, uh, similar to the Lord of the Rings, or let's say not even the Lord of the Rings. Let's say Lord of is what you search for, because you don't remember the name of the book, but you remember the name of the author for some reason. In that case, uh, you can give that author name as additional parameter, and then the result would be more filtered in a way. Okay, so now, and again, another search field. In this, we want a label for language. Like, I don't want, what if you want the French edition only, or you want the German edition only? So you can kind of put that. I'm going to use a drop down, a select, so that I can show that to you. So select uh, hashtag language. So this gives me a select, uh, not name, don't remove that. And inside this, we have options. So the first one is option, where the value is empty and the text is any. Then we'll repeat this a few times. The value is English, or the value is Spanish, or the value is French, or the value is German. And I change this to English, Spanish, French, German. Okay, so now let's go and check that out. So there you go. Language initially any, and then English, Spanish, French, German. Okay, you can choose something from here. Okay, how do I know these language names? It was here somewhere. Yeah, language FRE, not FRA, FRE. Okay. What else? There's a div of genre. Yeah, that could be a search field, right? So dot search field, and in this case, we want to go for genre, okay, or subject, whatever you call it. So I'm going to have a label for subject, and that would basically be subject slash genre. Yeah, okay. And the input will be of type text, of course, and the ID would be subject, and we can have a placeholder which says like example what are different genres. There's like fiction, there's like science. Come on, dot dot dot. Okay, perfect. So now if I go over to our library, there we go. Okay, so that's done for our genre. That will ensure like I want books, you want science fiction books, or you want like what would Marvel comics come under? Science fiction, right? Or let's say you want historical fiction like Chanakya's Chant, a really good book. You want to read that, or you want to search for that, then you can add it in historical fiction as one thing. So that's one div done. uh, hmm, there's one last thing that I would like to add, uh, because I sometimes remember like Harper Collins published this or Penguin Books published this. So publisher, that can be one of the things. This is just so that you filter out your results accurately. You can always not use these fields. Okay, that is an option. So input type text, ID publisher. This ID matches the for here, and placeholder will be like, let's say, publisher name. Okay, so we have the search field done for publisher. Search container, I think that is good enough. And search section, do we want anything else in the search section? mm, no, I think we're good. No, we want search section, we don't want search container, so this is done. Yeah, right here. Okay, let's focus on this part. uh what do we want here? Mm, loader, yeah, that would be a nice thing, right? We want to show a loading. uh so let's do that. Dev with an ID. So hashtag loading, and we can also give it some class. So class of loading and hidden. uh yeah, I think that would be nice. And we will give a dot spinner, which is not initially shown. It would be shown by CSS, and we can have a p tag saying searching books dot dot dot. Okay, so that's our loading done. A spinner will be shown to the user when it's searching for books. So you see the time it takes when I like copy paste this in a new tab and hit enter. The time it takes for it to load the books, fetch the books, is when we'll show a loading spinner. But what if it fails to fetch a book? Like, what if my query is something like this and it fails to fetch a book and like number found is 0? In that case, we should show an error, right? So let's do that. So, not ID, hashtag error dash message. We'll give it a class name of error message and hidden. Uh, and this is where the error message will go in. So what will happen? Okay, let's think about the process here. When you search for the books, it will first show a searching slash loading container for, let's say, whatever time. And if it passes, that's good. Uh, if it, okay, sorry. Initially, the search would be hidden. Then you click on that search button. Where is it? You click on this search button, then it will start showing. The hidden class will be removed and it will start showing a spinner. The spinner exists, it's just not visible to the user. Okay. And if it passes, then if the hidden class will be added back again, and the user will see the result, the output from this website. But if it fails for some reason and like 0 books are returned, in that case, this will get active. Okay, the error message, and the error message will be shown inside this div here. So you can say like error message here. Okay, will come here. So that's our error message done. uh, what next? We want a table. Okay, let's create a table. Once you have the results, you want to show the results, right? So show results. Let me also add some more comments. uh, this is for toggle views. This is the search section. This is basic, no, this is basic search. Basic search, which is this part, and you have the advanced search. So I'm adding comments for later. Advanced search for additional filtering. So that's our advanced search done. Loading spinner when books are fetched. Error message if 0 books found. And now we are focusing on showing the results. Okay, showing the results. What do I do? What do I do? I should create a div tag of results container. So I can do a dot results dash container. Also, just by the way, just to put it out there, so I have written like class, one class space second class. So there are two CSS classes that are applied here. Okay, this is similar to yesterday what we discussed about cascading. Okay, the name CSS cascading style sheets. So we'll apply a class error message which will have some styling in CSS. We'll apply a second class hidden which will have some styling like display, yet like display or display none. Okay, it's like show or hide kind of thing, which we'll do with CSS. And we will add or remove this class automatically or auto magically using JavaScript. Okay, so we'll find this ID error message element, then we'll check what classes it has. If it has two classes, error message and hidden, and if there are 0 books returned, then add remove this hidden, so then it will be shown. If you remove hidden, it is shown to the user. If you add hidden, it is hidden from the user. Okay. Okay, inside this, let's go for a table because that is awesome. So table with an ID of results dash table, and we'll have a class of like books dash table right here. Inside this, now a table, like the way a HTML document is, a HTML document has a head and a body. Similarly, a table has a head, which is the top part where all your column names are, and you have a body where your individual rows go. So let's have a T head here, and it will have one row. The first row, it will have multiple columns. So that is TH, ID, cover, book details, actions. ID, cover, which is the book cover, book details, and actions, or action more like. So they would be like one single thing. So this is what our table looks like: ID, cover, book details. If I select it, you see this faint blue line which divides them. Okay, that is like our lines for our table. So these things are going to go in the head part. Then in the body part, in the T body, ID, I'm going to give it like results dash body. Inside here would be the search results. Okay, so search results will be added here. So now we don't have the search results from before, like right now there's no search result. So this would be again dynamically added to this particular ID, inside this particular ID, using JavaScript. So tbody, close the table, close this, and now we move to the second part, which is the library section. Show results in a table. In here as well, error message will be added here. Okay, so now I think our search section, so this is our first view, which is the search section, right? That is complete. The search books will have these many things. Now when someone moves over or switches tab to the my library part or my library section, then what? So that is what we are going to write here. So I want a hashtag of library dash section, and we'll give it a class of hidden. Okay, why this class? Because, well, initially right now everything will be shown, but when we add CSS, you don't want to see my library on search books part, right? You want to switch over to this tab. So in that case, we'll hide everything here and show the second part. Initially, the user, when they come to this page, they will be on the search books part. So that way the bottom part should be hidden. This library section should be hidden from the user. Let's say a h2 which says my library. How much time do I have left? Okay, very less, but we should be able to complete this. Okay, wow, that is so bad. My sneeze went away, but I feel like sneezing. uh, okay, this will have a class of books dash table, then a t head here, where inside this will have the header. It should have the ID. It will have the exact same thing actually. Yeah, ID, cover, book details, and action. Actions more like. Actually, even here, I think we should, actions is more appropriate. because adding to a library, I think removing from library will, I don't know if I'll add that. Okay, so ID, cover, book details, and actions. uh, I forgot one thing, which is this would be in a single row. So tr, wrap all of this in a tr. So t head is the header part. In a single row, you have these many column names. And below t head would be t body, where ID would be library dash body, and adding a comment saying that library books will be added here. Okay, from index.db. So that gets rid of nearly everything. Okay, yeah, that's our main, I would say. What else? uh, Now this is interesting. uh, do you all know about template? So if you don't, here is a link to this. So what is a template? And it is a HTML element that serves as a mechanism for holding HTML fragments that will be used later via JavaScript or generated immediately into Shadow DOM. So ignoring the Shadow DOM, Shadow root, or all those things, what we are saying is we are going to create a template. Okay, and there is a HTML thing for it, normally used for rows. Example right here. We are doing this thing where we have created the header, but the body will be coming back as a response to API call, right? So what should it look like is what we do in the template. Okay, what should the body look like, or what details will it have, or what is the initial things that we want to add while it is fetching or when it is fetched, or all those things is what we define in a template. So template for body of table is what we are going to add here. So I'm going to use a template. I will give it an ID of uh, book row template. It will have in one row. Okay, one row. How does one row look like? So it will have a table data or TD of book ID. Okay, this is where the ID of the book will come in. Then it will have a TD, or again a table data in the second column. This is where that will go. A class of book dash cover. Okay, but this will have an image. So we'll also use image tag. You can give it a alt tag for screen readers to read. So book cover will have a class of cover dash image, and this image source, I want to add a placeholder. So there is a website called as, I think, placehold .co. Okay, this gives you a placeholder image, and you can ask it for a specific dimension. So 120 cross 180, it will give you a image of like this much size, placeholder image of this much size. So I'm going to add that in the source, that give me a placeholder image of this much size. This is a good enough book cover. Okay, small book cover. So that's your TD. Why? Because in a table, you don't want a large book cover. And you can read about the covers. There is a covers API. So small. Okay. There are three sizes of covers available: small, medium, and large. Uh, You can do whatever is the ID of the book, then dash s should return the small cover of the book. Then you can do, what about large? So if I do dash capital L, that should return me the large cover of the book. Okay. So, but while it is written, I don't want to do that. I don't want to overwhelm the server to fetch the cover when it is fetching the book. So initially we'll show only placeholder images, but later on we can show, we'll see. Actually, I'm not exactly sure what we could do there. Book dash details. Now in book details, we'll have it divided into three parts. There would be a h3 of, let's say, class of book dash title, a p tag which with the class of book dash author, then what else, a p tag, book year, book pages, book description, author, year when it was published, the how many pages does the book have, and any description of the book if it is available. All of them in one column, multiple rows in that column, kind of. Uh, Outside of this TD, we'll have book actions, let's say. And in this, we'll have a button which would be called as add or mark button. Okay, class of mark button, which will allow you, which will be where we'll add to library, or let's say a delete button, which is initially hidden, which will be called as remove from a library. And that should be our HTML. So let's go and look. As you can see, the template, it's not visible here. Okay. So, oh, there is a question. What is a template element? Perfect timing for the question. So the template element, it is not visible to the user. Remember that anything that we type in the HTML is normally visible to the user, but template is special. If you add a template, what you are saying essentially is that something will come here later on, and I will add it using like dynamically using JavaScript. Okay, I'll add that dynamically using JavaScript. Right now, don't show this to the user. Uh, and to see what it would look like, I can copy this, and right here in the T body, we'll dynamically insert this. Okay, not right now, I'm just showing this, but see, this is how it would look like once the JavaScript adds it here. It will have an ID, cover will be this, book details will come here, actions would be like one button, two button. Okay, but it would be added later. JavaScript will be like, oh, you know what, go over to the template in book ID, here add a value of something. Okay, in the book cover, replace this image source with whatever comes back from the server. In the book details, replace all of this. So then it will be visible here, not right now. Okay, understand this. Template is when you want a structure, when you want to create a structure but not show the structure to the user. Okay, that's when you will create a template. And then using JavaScript, you can go like, oh, I have a template, take that template, replace this with this with this with this with this, and done. Okay, then it will become visible to the user. Okay, perfect. So that's done, and our HTML is done, which is nice. We don't have exactly too much time for CSS, so I think I would say we are reaching towards the end of this session. uh, Let me create the files. We'll create a library.css and a library.js. Uh, Let me link this as in the same folder. There is a library.css, and towards the bottom below the template, we want to link the script. Source is library.js. Okay, so I would say our HTML is now complete. Really, I don't think there would be anything else that I would want to add. CSS wise, we'll have to add some stuff. Do I have this? Yeah, I think we could try the CSS for this. Actually, I'll give you the CSS because there's nothing much in CSS other than like what we have actually covered before. So, like container, uh, the toggle buttons. Uh, yeah, I think this is good. Uh, the search section, we can kind of add CSS for that as well, of course. So, this the books table, let's add some CSS for that as well. So books table CSS would be, yeah, pretty much easy, I think. Then the buttons, we'll add some like button styling and stuff so that we can change that. uh, what else? The loading state, yep, so that should have some CSS, and we'll also show a spinner using CSS. So to do a spinner, you can use something called as keyframes. So that is, I would say, just read about it. Really, really, really good, really helpful. uh, and we have this dot hidden, which is like repeated pretty much so many times, the hidden class. So that is display none. Okay, and to make it more responsive, we saw it yesterday as well, so breakpoints and stuff. And this is what it would look like after CSS. You cannot still switch the tabs, but you, as you can see, this was repeated twice. Now it is only here once, and that is all because of our hidden. If I remove that, you'll have like, this is what it will look like. Okay, anything that is not hidden, this is what it would look like. Okay, ideally. So that's our spinner, searching books, our error here. This is where it will come, our table. But some things would be hidden initially and they would be added later. So that's our CSS done. Let me quickly push this. uh, Feature library HTML and CSS complete. And you all should now have the code for it. With that, I think this is the end of my time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And next up, you can have a quick break by joining Aziman for a Tetris mini event. So just have fun, copy over the code, and have a relaxed time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I will see if I can get another session to complete the JavaScript of this. If not, keep an eye on the repository and you will have the code. Okay, so the link is in the chat. Once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and have a great weekend and enjoy your time in the beginners week at GHW. Any questions before I end this? No questions? Everyone's good. See ya. Bye bye.